What if we are not the first to dream, not the first to build, not even the first to fall? The Earth has been here long before us, and she remembers everything. Every age believes it's the beginning. Every age forgets that the Earth has begun countless times before. Maybe we're not the peak of creation, just another turn in an endless circle. Beneath our cities, beneath our bones, lies a memory older than humanity, a whisper from a time before time, reminding us that life never ends, it only changes shape. What if extinction is not the end, but a pause? What if every fall is simply the Earth, breathing in before she begins again? Long after we're gone, the Earth will still remember our touch. Because nothing is ever truly lost, not life, not thought, not time. It all returns, again and again, as a whisper of existence. Long before the first spark of human fire pierced the darkness, long before a single word was written or a city rose, there was another dawn. It was a dawn untouched by human eyes, a morning older than memory itself. The Earth then was not the calm, blue world we know. It was alive with chaos, volcanoes breathing flame, continents drifting like colossal rafts, and skies filled with storms of ash and light. Seas shimmered with life, forests reached the size of mountains, and the air itself was thicker, heavier, filled with the breath of a planet still in its making. The continents were strangers, vast and lonely, surrounded by endless water. They drifted apart slowly, their movements carving out the future we now walk upon. And upon them lived beings that defied the limits of imagination. Giants with skin like armor, eyes like suns, and hearts that beat in rhythm with the world's molten core. We call them dinosaurs, but to the Earth, they were more than beasts. They were the first rulers, the first architects of life's complexity, the first to embody what it meant to truly belong to this planet. For 200 million years, an eternity measured not in human centuries but in ages, they thrived. 200 million years of birth, adaptation, and survival. 200 million years of evolution shaping forms we still struggle to understand. To grasp that span of time is to feel our own existence shrink to a flicker. Humans have recorded history for less than 6,000 years. We have built machines, crossed oceans, and reached the stars, yet we are children compared to them. If time were a great spiral, our entire story would be but a single breath between the slow heartbeats of the dinosaurs' age. So what might intelligence look like when given such time? Not the sharp, restless brilliance of mankind, but something deeper, ancient, patient, grown over eons like coral in the sea. Could it be that consciousness is not a spark that appears once, but a flame that reignites in different forms, across different epochs? Perhaps we are not the first to think, to dream, to question. Perhaps others came before, in forms now lost to the dust of time. Imagine that ancient world. The air was warmer, rich with oxygen. Giant ferns and towering conifers covered the land. Insects the size of hawks floated through golden light. And amid that teeming life, creatures learned not only to survive, but to interact. Small raptors began to hunt in groups, their movements coordinated with precision, their eyes glinting with awareness. They watched, they planned, they remembered. Over generations, those memories became instincts, and perhaps, just beyond instinct, something else began to stir. Maybe, in the forests of the late Cretaceous, there were moments of curiosity, creatures that stopped not just to eat or hunt, but to observe. A shimmering reflection on the surface of a pond. A pattern of stars above a sleeping volcano. The awareness that the world around them followed rhythms, seasons, migrations, births, and deaths. That awareness is where intelligence begins. What if one branch of them learned to understand those rhythms, to anticipate storms, to sense migrations, to plan their survival beyond instinct? What if intelligence didn't bloom overnight in humankind, but had already blossomed once, long ago, under scaly hands and bright, unblinking eyes? Science tells us that evolution favors survival. But what if survival itself becomes an art? Given millions of years, the mind could grow in strange directions, subtle communication, memory shared not in words, but in sound, color, vibration. A herd might move as one, not by accident but by design. A pack might coordinate its hunt not through calls, but through silent understanding. Over time, what begins as instinct can become language. And language, of any kind, is the seed of civilization. We think of civilization as buildings and machines. But perhaps theirs was not made of stone or metal. Perhaps their civilization was of the living world itself, grown, not built. Forests shaped to their will. Valleys nurtured into homes. Rivers redirected not by dams, but by generations of adaptation. We look for ruins and find none, and so we say they never existed. But what if their world left no ruins because it needed none? What if their greatest creation was harmony with the planet itself, so perfect that when they vanished, the earth healed without trace? It's humbling to think about time not as a straight line, but as a circle. We stand here believing ourselves the pinnacle of creation, the culmination of billions of years. Yet the fossils remind us that dominance means nothing against the patience of the planet. The earth has ended empires before. It has erased species greater and more enduring than ours. And still, it continues, each ending a new beginning. Perhaps the dinosaurs, too, reached such a height. Perhaps they stood on the edge of understanding their place in the cosmos, before a single event swept it all away. An asteroid, a darkness, a silence. But what if extinction was not an ending, but a transformation? In every collapse, something is carried forward, a spark, a gene, a whisper. Could that spark have survived, hidden deep within the evolutionary chain, until it found new form in us? Could our own intelligence be a rebirth of theirs, a continuation of an ancient dream buried beneath the soil of time? There are moments when the veil of time feels thin. Standing before a fossilized footprint, it's easy to forget that it was once soft mud under a living foot. A creature stepped there, looked around, perhaps called out, then walked on. A small act, an ordinary moment, but preserved across millions of years. What else might be preserved, unseen? Not in stone, but in energy, in memory, in the very structure of life. Evolution carries the memories of survival, the reflexes, the instincts, the patterns that keep species alive. Maybe, buried within those patterns, is something more, a silent inheritance from the minds that came before us. When we look at a bird, a descendant of dinosaurs, we see intelligence in motion. They navigate the globe, remember faces, plan for the future. They are ancient minds in new forms. And through them, perhaps, the forgotten age still breathes. The more we learn about that distant era, the more mysterious it becomes. We find fossils with scars that healed, signs of cooperation and care. We discover nesting grounds where eggs were protected, where parents may have guarded their young with the same devotion we call love. Emotion, empathy, memory, these are not inventions of humanity. They are echoes of something ancient. It is possible, even likely, that consciousness did not begin with us. It began with life itself, the first cell that learned to respond, to adapt, to change its behavior to survive. From that seed, over billions of years, came awareness, sensation, reflection. Each epoch added another layer, another dimension to thought. The dinosaurs may have lived not just in nature, but with it, intuitively understanding balance long before humans gave it a name. Their intelligence may not have built cities, but it may have built harmony. And perhaps, that is a greater achievement than we know. Think of the scale of their reign, hundreds of millions of years of adaptation. Creatures that evolved to rule air, land, and sea. The earth shaped them, and they, in turn, shaped the earth. Every footprint, every breath, left an imprint on the world's evolution. We live today in a biosphere formed by their existence. Even now, in the oil beneath the ground, their remains fuel our machines. The irony is almost poetic. The world that came before still powers the world that came after. So when we ask, what if dinosaurs built their own civilization? Perhaps we misunderstand the question. Perhaps the better question is, what if civilization itself is not about technology, but continuity? They may not have built towers or cities, but they built the foundation of all life that followed. They prepared the world for what came next, for us. And yet, one haunting truth remains. For all their power, for all their time, they too fell. The sky burned, the earth shook, and in an instant, millions of years vanished. Not because they were weak, but because even the greatest life must yield to the cycles of the cosmos. Extinction is not cruelty, it is renewal. And in that renewal, life always finds a way to return, to rebuild, to evolve anew. The forgotten age may have ended in fire, but its legacy was written into the code of life itself. When the last dinosaur fell, the world was not empty, it was waiting. Waiting for something new to rise, something born from their ashes. That something was us. We are the memory of that world, walking, breathing, thinking again. The forgotten age is not truly forgotten. It is remembered in every heartbeat, every instinct, every motion of life. It is remembered in the curve of a bird's wing, in the persistence of the reptile, in the endurance of the earth itself. We are not separate from that age. We are its continuation, its dreams still unfolding. And if we listen closely, we might still hear the echoes of that world, not in the silence of fossils, but in the pulse of life all around us. Because the story of the dinosaurs is not about extinction. It is about endurance. It is about how life survives, transforms, and begins again. And maybe, just maybe, it is about how memory itself can outlive time. Intelligence does not burst into existence like a sudden flame. It begins as a flicker, fragile, uncertain, like a candle trembling in the wind of time. At first, it is little more than awareness, the sense of danger, the recognition of pattern, the memory of yesterday's storm. But with every breath of evolution, the flame grows brighter, steadier, and more deliberate. For billions of years, life on Earth survived by instinct alone. Yet in some creatures, something new began to stir, a curiosity beyond hunger, a choice beyond reflex. That was the first whisper of thought. It did not announce itself with fire or speech. It began quietly, in eyes that lingered too long, in minds that remembered, in hearts that hesitated before acting. We once believed that only humans could reason, feel grief, plan for the future, or dream. But even now, the world proves us wrong every day. Crows craft tools, bending twigs into hooks to pull food from unreachable places. Dolphins call one another by name, each sound carrying a unique identity. Elephants mourn their dead, standing in silence over the bones of those they loved. Octopuses, alone in their glass tanks, play with objects not for need but for joy. If intelligence has so many faces today, why should it not have appeared long before us? Why should it not have bloomed under the heavy skies of the Mesozoic, in the minds of creatures we now only know through stone? The dinosaurs, often painted as slow, mindless giants, were anything but. They were the masters of their world for nearly 200 million years, adapting to forests, deserts, oceans, and skies. Evolution rewarded not only their strength, but their cunning. Some hunted with strategy, not chaos. Some cared for their offspring, protected their eggs, and returned to the same nesting grounds year after year. In those behaviors, the faint light of awareness began to shine. It is easy to imagine their world as wild and brutal, but within that savagery was also structure, a rhythm of survival that required cooperation, learning, and memory. Predators do not survive by strength alone. They need anticipation, calculation, and patience. To ambush prey demands understanding. To teach offspring requires foresight. And to live as a group means communication, signals, sounds, gestures passed from one generation to the next. Imagine the raptors, sharp-eyed, fast, and deliberate. Their brains, relative to their bodies, were proportionally close to those of modern mammals. Some species, like Deinonychus or Trudon, had vision adapted for depth and color, and hearing fine-tuned to the faintest sound. They coordinated hunts, surrounded their targets, and struck in unison. What was that coordination, if not a form of early language and understanding beyond mere instinct? When a group of creatures learns to act as one, something extraordinary begins to form. Shared awareness. The pack becomes a mind of many parts, its strength not in size but in unity. And unity is where civilization begins. Perhaps somewhere, millions of years before the first human spark, there were small tribes of intelligent dinosaurs, cooperative, communicative, and evolving together. They might not have built cities of stone or metal, but perhaps they built societies of balance. They may have shaped their habitats to their needs, clearing ground, arranging nests, guarding resources, and teaching their young in organized patterns. To them, survival would not be chaos, it would be structure. Given enough time, structure becomes culture. Culture becomes knowledge. And knowledge, passed down through generations, becomes civilization. It's easy to dismiss this idea because we expect civilization to leave behind ruins. But ruins are only one kind of memory. The Earth remembers in other ways. It remembers in the layers of evolution, in the DNA of life that followed, in the instincts that linger within all living beings. We carry, within us, echoes of all who came before. Perhaps our problem is not that we lack evidence of ancient intelligence, but that we do not yet know how to recognize it. In the world of the dinosaurs, communication might not have looked or sounded like ours. They had no need for speech as we know it, no need for symbols scratched into stone. Their language might have been built from the earth itself: color, movement, resonance, vibration. A flick of a tail, a low rumble in the chest, a rhythmic beat upon the ground. Every creature that lives in harmony with nature must learn to listen to its frequencies. Birds still do, whales do, so perhaps, long before them, their ancestors did as well. Their intelligence could have been sensory, emotional, biological, a web of awareness rather than an individual mind. They may not have thought in words, but in feelings, in shared reactions, in collective memory. To us, that kind of consciousness would be invisible, unmeasurable, undetectable by our science. But to the Earth, it would have been another way for life to know itself. Consider how long they had to evolve. 200 million years. Enough time for continents to drift, for mountains to rise and fall, for oceans to open and close. Enough time for countless species to come and go, each learning, adapting, refining. What could intelligence become, given such time? We have existed for the blink of an eye compared to them, and yet we've built languages, machines, and dreams that touch the stars. If evolution granted us such power in a fraction of that time, imagine what it could have granted them. Maybe they didn't need technology because they were technology, the culmination of perfect biological design. Their civilization might have been internal, not external. A network of minds linked by instinct, empathy, and environment. A living, breathing consciousness spread across species. Where we build, they may have become. Where we separate ourselves from nature, they may have been one with it. As time passed, awareness deepened. Predators evolved not just sharper teeth, but sharper minds. They learned to anticipate the movements of prey, to set traps, to hunt with timing and coordination. The very act of planning a hunt is a form of abstract thinking, a projection into the future. That spark, once ignited, does not die. Herbivores, too, showed patterns of intelligence that go unnoticed in our imagination. Living in herds requires memory, cooperation, and emotion. To migrate vast distances, to protect the young, to sound alarms and recognize danger, all of it requires connection. And connection is consciousness made visible. The dinosaurs lived in a world that demanded awareness on every level. To thrive, they had to learn, remember, and adapt in a constantly shifting environment. Each generation built upon the survival of the last, not through tools or writing, but through instinct refined into understanding. And slowly, quietly, that understanding became thought. We tend to believe that consciousness is rare, that it belongs only to us. But perhaps consciousness is inevitable, a pattern the universe repeats whenever life endures long enough to look inward. If that is true, then the spark of awareness must have appeared many times before. Perhaps the dinosaurs were one of its earliest forms, a civilization not of buildings and borders, but of being. Imagine them sensing the pulse of the planet itself. Imagine awareness not confined to a single creature, but shared through generations, through evolution itself. To exist for millions of years is to be part of the planet's rhythm. And maybe, in their own way, they understood that rhythm better than we ever will. We look for signs of civilization, metal, architecture, machines. Yet what if the greatest civilizations leave no scars? What if the highest intelligence is not measured by what it builds, but by what it preserves? A species that lives in balance for millions of years might be the most advanced of all. We live in a world of conquest and consumption, but they may have lived in one of harmony and endurance. Their success was their silence. Their brilliance was their belonging. It's humbling to realize how fragile our own brilliance is in comparison. We've existed for a heartbeat, yet we've already wounded the planet that gave us life. The dinosaurs, in contrast, shaped and maintained the ecosystems of the world for eons. They were part of the Earth's great symphony, not its conductor. Perhaps intelligence, in its truest form, is not domination, but harmony. Not the desire to control the world, but to understand it. Not to rise above nature, but to merge with it completely. That might have been their secret, the spark they carried until the very end. When the skies darkened and the fire fell, when the oceans boiled and the mountains split, their age came to a close. But that awareness, the spark of intelligence, did not vanish. It was absorbed into the planet's memory. It hid within the DNA of the survivors, the small feathered creatures that would one day become birds. And through them, perhaps through all life that followed, the spark endured. We like to imagine that evolution is a ladder, climbing ever upward. But it is more like a circle, a memory retold through new forms. Every creature that lives today carries within it the lessons of those that came before. And so, when a raven solves a puzzle or a dolphin learns a name, it may not be learning something new at all. It may simply be remembering. The spark of awareness was not born in us, it was inherited. It has passed from age to age, from creature to creature, from the first breath of life to the latest thought of humankind. We are not the first to wonder, to question, to dream. We are simply the latest form of an ancient curiosity, still unfolding. And maybe, deep within the echo of time, that first awareness still lingers, the spark that began in the eyes of creatures who ruled the earth long before memory began. A spark that never went out. A spark that still burns, quietly, within us all. If an intelligent species of dinosaur had risen, what might their world have looked like? We often imagine civilization in the image of ourselves, built upon metal, smoke, and light. But intelligence does not always lead to iron and fire. Sometimes it leads inward, toward harmony, adaptation, and coexistence so complete that it leaves no mark behind. The world of the dinosaurs was not one of deserts and dust, but of lush continents veiled in warmth. The air was heavier, the oxygen rich, the climate unbroken by frost. Forests were vast but strange, ferns taller than houses, cycads and conifers stretching endlessly toward the dim, golden skies. Yet trees were not as abundant as in our age, and wood was not the bounty it is today. To creatures of scale and sinew, construction would not mean cutting, shaping, or stacking. It would mean carving, molding, and growing. If civilization emerged in that ancient age, it would have been born not from flame but from patience. Their cities may have clung to the bones of volcanoes, terraced into the cooled faces of magma, sculpted from basalt and limestone, shaped not by hammers but by claws guided with precision and care. Perhaps they built along cliffsides where rivers carved the land, allowing the earth itself to be their foundation. Where we raised walls, they might have hollowed sanctuaries. Where we paved roads, they might have followed the natural veins of stone. To imagine them is to imagine a world where life itself was architecture. Their homes might have been living chambers, grown from coral like organisms that hardened into protective shells. Structures that breathed, expanded, and healed with time, half stone, half flesh. Their buildings could shimmer with the colors of life, glowing faintly under the heat of Mesozoic moons. They may not have built cities of noise and smoke, but of silence and light, settlements that pulsed like bioluminescent reefs in the humid night. We, in our arrogance, assume that progress means domination. But perhaps the dinosaurs who rose to awareness never sought to conquer nature, only to join it. Their tools may not have been objects at all, but extensions of their bodies, symbiotic creatures or grown appendages designed for purpose. Where we invented machines, they may have bred them. Imagine insects engineered through instinct to carry minerals or to weave shelter. Imagine mosses that filtered water or fungi that generated warmth. In their civilization, the line between technology and biology would blur until it disappeared. Light, too, may have been alive. Some species of deep-sea fish and prehistoric fungi still carry the secret of bioluminescence. If the dinosaurs harnessed such gifts, their cities would not blaze with fire but shimmer softly with blue and green light, an echo of the stars above reflected in the world below. Each living lantern might respond to movement or emotion, glowing brighter when approached, dimming to rest. Night in their civilization would not be darkness but quiet radiance, a landscape breathing with light and life. Their language would be the most alien of all. Not sound, but motion. Not words, but color. Skin that shifted hue in response to emotion. Frills that rippled with tone and vibration. Tail movements that conveyed rhythm, cadence, and meaning. Communication might have been a full-body experience, an orchestra of light and motion, impossible to translate into human form. To speak, one would not only think but become the thought, allowing emotion, movement, and color to merge. Where we use air and sound, they might have used chemistry and light, pheromones released in specific patterns, electrical pulses visible through translucent scales. Such a species would have lived in a world where truth was visible. There would be no deceit, no falsehood, for emotion itself would betray the lie. Color and pulse would reveal thought before it was spoken. A civilization founded upon transparency, where every being shone with their innermost truth. Art would not have been painted, it would have been grown. Their pigments would not come from crushed minerals, but from living colors coaxed from plant and scale. Patterns of iridescence passed through generations, like heritage and pride. Entire societies might have expressed culture through appearance. Glowing crests to mark lineage, bioluminescent stripes to represent region, shifting hues to represent emotion or role. Music, too, would have been different. They would not have needed instruments, for their bodies could sing. Resonant chambers in the chest, vibrations along the bones, deep harmonic calls that rolled across the valleys. A chorus of consciousness, the sound of thousands joining their voices not in song but in unity. It would not be melody as we know it, but a living vibration of thought shared through frequency. Perhaps the earth itself vibrated in answer. Religion, if they had one, would not have worshipped gods of sky or flame, but the pulse of the world itself. The heat of magma beneath their feet, the breath of storms, the cycles of birth and decay, all would be sacred. Their temples might have been caverns where molten rivers met the sea, glowing with heat and energy. No idols, no scriptures, only rhythm and remembrance. To them, existence would not be separate from divinity. To live would be to worship. Life itself was the prayer. And memory. How would they remember? Not in books or stone tablets, but in life itself. Their history may have been biological, imprinted in their offspring. Perhaps memories were passed chemically, encoded in generations like instinct but richer, more detailed. Each child would awaken with ancestral impressions, visions of events never lived, voices never heard, but somehow remembered. The past would live not behind them but within them. If this were so, they would have no need for archives. Their civilization would be immortal through inheritance. Every generation would carry the sum of all before it. Time would not erase their stories because their stories would breathe. But even the greatest harmony cannot stand unchanged. Nature demands transformation, and civilizations, no matter how advanced, must face the weight of entropy. Perhaps theirs began to shift when the world did. Volcanoes rumbled, the air thickened, the seas grew warmer, and the earth's balance trembled. They may have seen the omens long before the end, the skies reddening, the migrations failing, the light of the stars seeming dimmer each year. Yet they would not have fled. To a civilization so deeply intertwined with the planet, extinction would not be a tragedy but a transition. Death would not mean the end, only the return to the source. Perhaps, sensing their time's decline, they prepared, not through weapons or escape, but through legacy. They may have chosen to encode the essence of their being not into stone monuments, but into the very fabric of life. Some say evolution forgets, but perhaps it remembers in silence. Perhaps they ensured that their memory would endure in the smallest of survivors, the early birds, the mammals, the DNA that would one day shape us. Their extinction might have been less a fall and more a surrender, a conscious merging back into the cycle that had always sustained them. We think of them as gone, yet their pulse lingers. The patterns of their minds might still echo in the intelligence of animals today. The coordination of ants, the flocking of birds, the migration of whales, all carry traces of a collective awareness that once ruled the world. The dinosaurs may have vanished from sight, but their consciousness may still whisper in the instincts of every living thing. We measure civilization by ruins, by what endures after death. But what if the highest form of civilization leaves no ruins at all? What if the truest success is to live so harmoniously with the world that, when you disappear, the earth remains whole? Our legacy may one day be a planet of scars, but theirs may have been a world untouched, where memory and matter existed in perfect balance. Perhaps that is why we cannot find them. We are searching for what they never built. We are listening for words they never spoke. We are digging for bones when their wisdom lives in the blood that still flows through all life. Every cell that divides, every instinct that guides migration, every heartbeat that recognizes the rhythm of the planet, it may all be echoes of that lost intelligence. They did not need to be remembered in monuments, because they became the monument. They became the cycle itself. Imagine, for a moment, standing in that ancient world. The humid air glows with the soft shimmer of life. Creatures move like living art, their scales reflecting the sunset in colors beyond imagining. The ground hums faintly beneath your feet, the pulse of the earth, the heartbeat of an age. In the distance, carved into the black stone of a volcanic ridge, a vast structure rises, not a fortress, but a sanctuary. It hums with warmth, light flowing through cracks like veins of gold. Within it, generations gather, not to wage war, but to listen to the planet. Their leaders are not rulers but keepers of rhythm. They listen to the movements of the tides, the migrations of the wind, the whispers of the stars. Their greatest knowledge is balance. Their highest achievement is understanding. And when they look at the heavens, they do not see conquest, they see continuity. They see that all things move in cycles, that every rise is followed by rest, every dawn by dusk. They know, as we have yet to learn, that survival is not the goal, harmony is. When the final cataclysm came, they did not curse the stars or fear the dark. They accepted their place within the rhythm. Their last act may not have been desperation, but grace, returning their light to the world that had given it. And when the ashes settled and silence fell, their memory did not vanish. It transformed. It became the instinct of flight in birds, the curiosity in mammals, the pulse of awareness that would one day awaken in us. Their civilization may be gone, but their story continues, retold in every living thing that still breathes the same ancient air. We call them extinct, but perhaps they achieved something far greater than survival. They became eternal, not as individuals, but as the essence of life itself. Every world ends, though not always in fire. Some end in silence, in shadows, in slow forgetting. And so it was for the world of the great reptilian age, an empire of flesh and color, of intelligence bound to the pulse of the earth. For 200 million years, they ruled not through cruelty, but through connection. Their world was balance, a living, breathing ecosystem that knew no master. But even harmony must one day bow to change. It began quietly, as endings often do. The air thickened with whispers of imbalance. Volcanoes far across the seas began to wake from their long sleep, painting the skies with rivers of fire. The scent of ash traveled on the wind, a faint omen of the storm to come. The elders, those who listened to the rhythm of the planet, felt the shift long before it was seen. The heat of the magma beneath their sanctuaries pulsed with unease. The tides no longer sang in their familiar patterns. And the stars, the ancient teachers they had always followed, began to move in ways that no prophecy had foreseen. They gathered in the luminous caverns beneath the mountains, their bioluminescent crests flickering in tones of sorrow and calculation. Something beyond the earth's breath had changed. A light had appeared in the heavens, faint at first, like a distant ember, then growing day by day into a terrible brightness. Some called it a wandering sun, others a messenger of the end. The youngest among them, the scientists and watchers of the skies, argued that it was not divine but cosmic, a body of stone and ice drawn by the gravity of fate. Whatever it was, it burned brighter each night, until even the oceans reflected its glow. As the fire in the heavens grew, the world below began to suffer. Ash fell like snow across jungles once vibrant with color. The light of the sun dimmed to a bruised orange, casting endless dusk upon the land. The plants that sustained the vast herbivores withered. Predators roamed farther and hungrier. The great balance, that perfect symphony of life they had preserved for eons, began to unravel. And still, the light in the sky grew larger. It moved now, slowly but visibly, across the horizon, a new, false moon that heralded something vast and unstoppable. Fear spread, not as chaos, but as mourning. For a civilization that lived in harmony with nature could not imagine fighting the will of the cosmos. They did not rage against the end. They sought to understand it, to prepare their spirits and their world for what was to come. But not all accepted fate so easily. Among the younger orders, those who still dreamed of mastery and exploration, a different fire burned. They believed that survival was possible, that their knowledge could overcome the judgment of the stars. They spoke of burrowing deep into the mantle, into chambers shielded by molten rock. Others looked to the oceans, where warmth and life would persist beneath the waves even as the surface froze. And some, the most daring, turned their eyes not downward but upward. For generations they had studied the stars. They knew their patterns, their pulses, their secrets. They had mapped the invisible forces that bound them in their endless dance. And now, facing the end of all they had built, they asked a question that would echo through eternity. Could life escape its birthplace? It is easy to imagine them, Slender, intelligent creatures, gathered on high plateaus, constructing great reflective instruments that shimmered under the last unbroken skies. They might have launched their final creations into the heavens, not machines as we know them, but living vessels, organisms shaped through the art of bioengineering, designed to endure the void. Perhaps they sent their essence, their memory, or even their genetic legacy into the cosmos, bound for unknown worlds. If such beings existed, their footprints would not fossilize, and their cities would not endure. Only the faintest trace might remain, buried in myth or hidden within the very fabric of life that followed. And then, the day came. The light in the sky ceased to move. It filled the heavens, growing larger until it no longer looked like a star but like a rising second sun. The air grew hot, the oceans hissed and steamed. The ground trembled with a sound so deep it seemed to come from the core of the planet itself. For one final moment, every creature, from the smallest insect to the greatest titan of scale, lifted its gaze to the burning horizon. Then came the flash. It was not merely light, but obliteration. A brilliance beyond fire, beyond sound, beyond sight. In an instant, forests turned to vapor, mountains shattered, and the skies themselves ignited. The asteroid struck with a force greater than every volcano, every storm, every war that would ever follow. The earth shook so violently that time itself seemed to pause. Darkness followed, not for days or weeks, but for years. Ash and dust filled the atmosphere, blotting out the sun. The temperature plunged. The great green world became gray and silent. The creatures that once ruled it, proud, powerful, and wise, faded like dying stars. Yet perhaps not all perished. In the deep ocean trenches, where light had never reached, warmth remained. In caverns far beneath the crust, where magma still glowed, life endured. Maybe there, in those hidden sanctuaries, a few survivors waited out the centuries, dwindling, adapting, changing. Perhaps their descendants became the reptiles, the birds, the creatures we know today. Perhaps their essence never truly vanished, but evolved, transformed into new forms of life that carried within them the faint memory of the world before the fire. The myths that survived into human times speak of gods descending from the stars, of shining beings who taught early humanity the arts of survival, language, and craft. We imagine these gods as divine, but what if they were simply old, remnants of a species that once called Earth home long before we did? What if they had escaped the cataclysm and returned eons later, finding the planet renewed and young once more? To those early humans, such beings would have seemed immortal, radiant in memory and wisdom. Perhaps the legends of serpents, dragons, and sky gods are echoes of the survivors of that ancient world, seen through the lens of myth. If so, then the fall of the great reptilian age was not total annihilation. It was transformation, an end that became a beginning. For every extinction, the earth leaves a door ajar. Life, in its endless hunger for existence, finds its way through. What vanished in one form may return in another. And maybe, in the quiet spaces of our DNA, there remain traces of their memory, molecular ghosts whispering from the past. Perhaps our fascination with reptiles, with scales and dragons, with the power of creatures from before time, is more than imagination. It could be remembrance, a deep, genetic nostalgia for an age when the earth belonged to minds not unlike our own. The fall of the great reptilian age was not just the death of a world. It was a baptism of fire, the resetting of a cosmic clock. What followed would be an age of darkness, and then, eventually, of light once again. From the ashes of giants, the seeds of new worlds were sown. The earth began to breathe anew. Forests returned. Creatures small and fragile crept through the ruins of their titanic predecessors. And among them, the slow, patient hand of evolution began its work again. We are the children of that renewal. Every step we take upon this planet walks across the bones of what came before. Every breath we draw contains atoms once held in the lungs of creatures long vanished. The end of their age became the foundation of ours. And yet, deep within the collective memory of life, something ancient stirs. A quiet awareness, a distant longing for a world of scale and shadow, where intelligence glowed in living light and the earth itself was alive with song. We cannot prove they existed, but perhaps that is not the point. Perhaps the memory of them endures not in fossil or ruin, but in the very rhythm of life that still moves through every creature that survived. Every age ends, and every ending is a beginning. The fall of the great reptilian age was not the death of life, it was its rebirth. And maybe, one day, when our own world trembles and our skies grow red, we will understand what they did. That the universe does not end, it transforms. And life, in every form it takes, is the one thing that never truly dies. Long after the fire faded, after the dust settled and silence returned, life began again. Tiny, trembling creatures crept through the ashes of their ancestors, carrying within them the unbroken spark of survival. They did not know what had come before, but their bodies remembered. Instinct whispered where memory could not. The earth had changed, but the pulse of life remained the same. And within that pulse, buried deep in the architecture of every living thing, the ancient rhythm of the reptilian mind still beat. It did not vanish with the fall of its makers. It endured, reshaped, hidden beneath layers of evolution. When mammals rose from the shadows, they inherited more than the land. They inherited the code of instinct, the primal awareness, the silent intelligence born in the world before memory. Even now, inside every human being, there lies that echo, a relic of an age before thought, before words, before we learned to question the sky. Scientists call it the reptilian complex, the oldest region of the human brain, carved from time itself. It governs heartbeat and breath, dominance and defense, hunger and fear. It is the ancient core that stirs when danger comes, when shadows lengthen, when something primal reminds us that we are not as far from the wild as we pretend to be. When the heart races without reason, when anger burns before logic, when survival overrides compassion. That is the whisper of the reptile. A memory too deep for language, too ancient for reason. It does not think in words, but in pulses, in patterns older than civilization. It is the same force that drove the first hunters, that taught us to fight and flee, to defend what is ours. It is not cruelty, it is the memory of existence itself. Perhaps the greatest illusion of humanity is that we are new. We look upon our cities, our art, our machines, and we say, we are different now. But in truth, we are a continuation, not a beginning. We are the next verse of a song that began long before our kind could sing. The architecture of our brains, the pattern of our instincts, the very chemistry of our emotions, all are echoes of that ancient age. Every act of creation, every spark of curiosity, every struggle for survival, all trace back to those who came before. When a human defends their home, when they claim a piece of land, when they protect their young with unthinking fury, that is not civilization speaking. That is the ancient mind, older than thought, reminding us that we are part of the same unbroken chain of life. When we feel fear in the dark, when we flinch at sudden movement, when we sense danger before we see it, that is the memory of scales and jungle nights. We have inherited not only their instincts, but their perseverance. Their will to live became our will to evolve. The reptilian mind was not cruel, only certain. It did not question its place in the world. It was the world, perfectly attuned to balance, to hunger, to the eternal rhythm of survival. We, the inheritors, have covered that ancient mind with layers of reason, emotion, and imagination. We have built civilizations upon it, painted gods and galaxies over its surface, but beneath every idea, every philosophy, every prayer, it still beats. The first brain, the core of being. Perhaps that is why humanity struggles so deeply between creation and destruction. Our minds are a meeting of two worlds, the old and the new. The ancient instinct to dominate and the new capacity to dream. We are both predator and poet, both survivor and seeker. The reptilian pulse tells us to protect, to fight, to endure. The mammalian heart teaches us to nurture, to love, to imagine. And the human spirit, a fusion of both, strives to make meaning of the conflict between them. Every war, every peace treaty, every moment of kindness, and every act of violence are born of that tension. Civilization itself is the negotiation between the memory of the reptile and the vision of the dreamer. Perhaps this is why our progress always walks hand in hand with destruction, because evolution does not erase its past, it builds upon it. The reptilian mind still sits at the throne of instinct, guarding the gates of survival while our higher thoughts wander through the stars. And maybe that is the hidden design, that we are meant to carry both. For what is humanity without its primal fire? Our creativity, our drive, our will to push beyond the known, all rise from the same ancient impulse to adapt, to overcome, to persist. The first creatures that looked upon a storm and sought shelter began the story that ends in cities of glass. The first beings that claimed territory and defended it began the story that ends in nations. The first eyes that watched the stars began the story that ends in telescopes. We are their legacy, refined but not replaced. Perhaps evolution is not a ladder, but a spiral, forever returning to its roots, revisiting what came before in new forms. The reptile became the bird became the dreamer became the thinker. And yet, in every thinker, the reptile remains, quiet, patient, watching. Even our myths remember. Across every culture, serpents and dragons appear as guardians, destroyers, and creators. They wind through the stories of every civilization, from the serpents of Eden to the dragons of China, from the feathered serpent of the Maya to the Ouroboros swallowing its tail in eternal renewal. These are not coincidences. They are reflections, humanity remembering, in story, what it cannot recall in thought. The serpent, in all its forms, represents both fear and wisdom, death and rebirth. It is the symbol of the cycle itself, the living memory of transformation. When we speak of enlightenment, of shedding the old to become the new, what are we describing if not the molting of a reptile? To grow, we must shed. To evolve, we must release what no longer fits. It is not just biology, it is metaphor written into our nature. The ancient ones did not vanish. They became lesson and lineage, spirit and symbol, buried deep within our own becoming. And sometimes, in rare moments of clarity, we feel it, the ancient awareness stirring beneath our modern thoughts. A sudden calm before danger, a sharpness in silence, a knowing that cannot be explained. It is not superstition, it is inheritance. It is the same wisdom that once guided beings far older than us, who read the world not in words but in vibrations and scent, in heat and light. They did not need language to understand existence. They were existence. We, their descendants, translate that same knowing into emotion, into philosophy, into art. When an artist paints fire, when a musician builds rhythm upon rhythm, when a scientist seeks the pattern behind the chaos, all are echoes of that ancient curiosity, the same drive to comprehend the universe that once looked up at the stars before the sky fell. The reptilian age may have ended in flame, but its spirit endures in every act of human creation. Perhaps that is why our species dreams so fiercely, because somewhere deep within, something ancient still yearns to finish what it began. The memory of the reptile is not only the story of survival. It is the story of evolution remembering itself. It is proof that intelligence does not begin with humanity, it flows through life itself. Every creature that learns, adapts, and endures contributes to that great, silent archive written in the code of living things. We are pages in that book, not its first words. And one day, when our own age fades, when the monuments of humankind crumble into dust, the memory will continue, passed on to whatever comes next. Perhaps they will find our fossils, our relics, our signals drifting through space, and they will wonder, who were these beings that dreamed of the stars? And perhaps they will carry, within their own new forms, the faint echo of our thoughts, just as we carry the memory of the reptile. Life does not forget, it transforms. Memory does not vanish, it evolves. The oldest part of us still remembers a world of scales and thunder, of heat and hunger, of endless survival. It remembers the fall of the great age and the rise of new light. It remembers because it must, for memory is how life ensures its own continuation. We are the living proof that extinction is never absolute. What dies in form survives in essence. And the essence of that ancient world breathes within us still, in the rhythm of our hearts, the pulse of our instincts, and the silent wisdom of our oldest mind. We are not separate from them. We are their continuation, their evolution, their voice carried forward through the storm of time. The memory of the reptile is the memory of life itself, enduring, adapting, dreaming through every age. If Earth has reset itself before, why not again? The question lingers like the echo of thunder after the storm has passed. Every mountain, every ocean, every grain of sand carries proof that nothing remains unchanged forever. Civilizations rise, they breathe, they burn, and they fall back into the soil that once birthed them. Even time itself seems to exhale, expanding and contracting, creating and erasing, dreaming and awakening, in endless rhythm. The dinosaurs had their turn. They ruled the world longer than we have existed, their empire written in muscle and bone, their legacy buried beneath the layers of our cities. Before them, other worlds rose and fell. Worlds of microscopic masters, of plants that ruled the land, of creatures that swam through primeval seas and saw the world through alien eyes. After them came us, brief, bright, and fragile. We think of our time as the pinnacle, the final page of creation. But perhaps it is only another chapter, one of millions, in the story that the Earth has been telling since the beginning. Because this planet is not static. It remembers through renewal. Every reset is not an ending, but a breath, an inhale before the next creation. The continents shift, the poles wander, the climate dances between extremes. Species appear, flourish, and vanish, making way for what comes next. It is the most patient cycle in existence, and it never stops. If you listen closely, you can almost feel it. Beneath the hum of machines, beneath the whisper of wind and waves, the Earth still turns, slow, deliberate, unhurried. It does not mourn the past, it transforms it. The forests that were once deserts, the mountains that were once oceans, the air that was once poison, all prove that destruction is only half the story. The other half is rebirth. So what if this age, our age, is only another verse in that endless song? What if, one day, the remnants of our civilization become the fossils of tomorrow, the strange, silent bones of a forgotten dream? Imagine the far future. 100 million years from now. The cities we built have long turned to dust. The oceans have risen and fallen again. The stars in our sky have shifted their constellations, and the moon has drifted farther away. Somewhere, a new species walks upon the Earth. They are not us, not even close. Perhaps they have scales that shimmer in the light, or translucent skin that glows softly in the dark. Perhaps they breathe a different air, or think in colors instead of words. And one day, they dig deep into the ground, searching, as we once did, for the ghosts of their planets past. They will find us, not our faces, not our voices, but the traces of who we were. Fragments of bone pressed into stone, metallic skeletons of cities buried beneath layers of silt. A satellite, half melted, caught in orbit like a fossil of the sky. They will study our ruins as we once studied the ruins of others, and they will wonder. Who were these creatures? What dreams built their world? Did they know they were not the first to rise? Did they understand that they, too, were living inside the memory of another age? And maybe, just maybe, they will feel a strange familiarity, an echo beneath their thoughts, something ancient stirring within their own being. Because the memory of Earth is not bound to form or species. It flows through everything that lives, like a current through time. Every creature carries the sum of what came before. Not in stories, but in DNA, in instinct, in the silent architecture of life itself. They may not remember us by name, but they will carry pieces of our existence, in their bones, in their breath, in the way they build, love, and dream. The cycle is not cruel, it is sacred. It is not punishment, but transformation. Extinction, in the language of the cosmos, means renewal. When fire comes, it clears the forest for new growth. When the ice advances, it preserves what would otherwise decay. Every fall makes space for a new ascent. And so, the Earth becomes its own sculptor, reshaping itself with every epoch, rewriting its story through the artistry of time. Perhaps that is the greatest truth of all, that nothing ever truly ends. Our world will not vanish, it will become something else. Our oceans may retreat, our skies may change, but the essence of life will continue, adapting, evolving, dreaming in new forms. We are the children of countless resets before us, and the ancestors of countless resets to come. And maybe that's why humans feel such deep awe when they look at ruins, or stare into the night sky. We are haunted by the memory of impermanence. Something within us knows that all things, even stars, must die and be born again. We sense the rhythm of creation beneath the noise of civilization. Our stories of apocalypse, of heaven and hell, of destruction and rebirth, they are all attempts to describe the same eternal truth, that everything changes. That endings are beginnings wearing different faces. The endless reset is not about loss, it is about continuity. Each reset is a heartbeat in the body of eternity. And just as we inherited the bones of dinosaurs, those who come after us will inherit the remnants of our dreams. Perhaps they will find our words encoded in crystals, or our songs fossilized in magnetic waves. Perhaps they will study the faint radio signals still whispering across the cosmos, carrying our laughter, our stories, our hopes, drifting endlessly through time. They will know we once existed. They will know that we, too, looked at the stars and wondered where we came from. And maybe, just as we once asked, they will ask the same question. Were we alone? Or were we just one verse in the symphony of Earth's memory? The answer will come to them the same way it has always come, not in thunder, but in silence. For the truth of the universe does not shout, it breathes. It moves through the turning of planets, through the falling of rain, through the soft erosion of mountains and the quiet birth of seeds. And in that stillness, the truth remains eternal. Everything returns. Everything continues. Nothing truly ends. Perhaps one day, in a far future sunrise, the earth will awaken again to life, new, strange, magnificent. And though our names will be gone, though our monuments will have long crumbled into dust, the essence of who we were will still linger. In the patterns of the wind, in the mineral memory of the soil, in the quiet intelligence of whatever beings come next. For life does not begin from nothing, it is born from what was. We are the ancestors of the unimaginable. And maybe that is the meaning we've searched for all along. Not eternal life as we once dreamed of it, not the promise of unending flesh or golden cities, but continuity. To be part of something vast, beautiful, and unbreakable. To live, to fade, and to become the soil for new life to grow. To give our brief light back to the endless cycle that made us. Because even when our time is over, the universe will remember. Not as we do, with words and monuments, but through energy, through motion, through the persistence of form and rhythm. The same atoms that build your body once burned in the hearts of stars, and they will one day build something new. That is the true immortality, the endless reset, the unbroken song of existence. The earth does not mourn its fallen ages, it transforms them into new worlds. The dinosaurs became birds, the ashes of forests became oil, which became fire, which became flight. The bones of mountains became the soil beneath our feet. And one day, our own world, our stories, our cities, our struggles, will become the foundation of another age we will never see. And that is not tragedy. That is grace. To know that we are not the first, and not the last. To understand that existence itself is the ultimate act of remembering. Every cycle, every reset, every age, a new voice in the eternal chorus of life. So when the next reset comes, whether by fire, by ice, or by the slow erosion of time, it will not be an ending. It will be the earth beginning again. And somewhere, in that distant dawn, something will awaken and breathe for the first time. It will open its eyes, look upon the horizon, and feel a strange and ancient wonder. It will not know why, but deep within its being, it will carry the echo of everything that came before. The laughter of humanity, the roar of dinosaurs, the hum of machines, the silence of stars. And through that echo, the earth will remember. It always does. Because no matter how many times she resets, no matter how many ages fall into shadow, one truth remains. The earth never forgets, she only begins again. Every age believes itself to be the beginning. Every civilization that has ever risen looks to its own horizon and thinks, we are the first. We measure time in the length of our own memory, never realizing how short that memory truly is. Stone erodes, metal rusts, and even the stars we navigate by will one day vanish. Yet through it all, life continues, reshaping itself, renewing itself, remembering itself. The truth is humbler, and far more beautiful than we allow ourselves to imagine. Life is not a ladder climbing toward perfection. It is a circle, vast, slow, and eternal. It folds in on itself, learning, unlearning, and beginning again in infinite forms. What we call progress is only one small turn of that wheel, one heartbeat in the endless rhythm of creation. Civilizations bloom like spring flowers, sudden, vibrant, magnificent. They build, they dream, they reach for the stars. And then, as all living things do, they fade. Sometimes by fire, sometimes by ice, sometimes by their own hands. But even as they fall, they leave behind seeds, fragments of knowledge, whispers of memory, sparks of awareness, that the earth gathers gently into herself. And when the time is right, she breathes again, and the seeds awaken in a new form. The dinosaurs may have been one such bloom, a civilization not of stone and steel, but of flesh and instinct, of understanding beyond the kind we recognize. Their world was not built for our eyes to see. Their art, their language, their memory may not have fossilized. But perhaps, in ways beyond our comprehension, they reached toward the same mysteries we do. The pulse of life, the dance of stars, the awe of existence itself. Perhaps they, too, looked at the horizon and wondered, will this last forever? And like us, they may have discovered that nothing does, and that this is not tragedy, but truth. We, too, are a part of that same great rhythm. Our monuments, our machines, our philosophies, they are all expressions of the same ancient current that once flowed through claw and scale. Intelligence is not a crown bestowed upon one species. It is a current, flowing through time, finding new vessels to inhabit. Sometimes it takes the form of a raptor's cunning, sometimes a mammal's empathy, sometimes a human's imagination. And after us, it will take another form, perhaps softer, stranger, or wiser than our own. To understand this is not to despair. It is to belong. Because when you truly see time, not as a line, but as an ocean, you realize that nothing is ever lost. It only changes shape. The matter that forms your bones once drifted through the heart of a star. The air you breathe today has passed through the lungs of countless beings before you, dinosaurs, whales, birds, ancestors. Every heartbeat echoes with the rhythm of worlds long gone. You are not separate from them, you are their continuation. In the silence between ages, life never stops dreaming. The universe keeps rewriting itself through the language of transformation. Even when all seems destroyed, creation hides in the ashes, waiting for its next breath. What we call extinction may be only evolution seen from too close a distance. What we call endings are only beginnings that haven't revealed themselves yet. Look deep into the fossil record, and you see more than death, you see persistence. The shape of wings hidden in reptilian scales. The seeds of mammals curled within the shadows of lizards. The first spark of thought flickering behind ancient eyes. The thread that runs through it all is unbroken. That thread is life, weaving, twisting, circling endlessly, through form and fire and time. And if you listen closely, beneath the hum of modern life, you can still hear it, the same heartbeat that once echoed through the forests of the Jurassic, the same rhythm that moved through the blood of raptors and titans, now pulsing quietly within us. It is not gone, it has only evolved. Perhaps this is what the Earth has been trying to teach us since the beginning. That the story of life is not one of domination or survival, but of inheritance. Every creature, every civilization, inherits the dream of those who came before. The dinosaurs gave their dream to the mammals. The mammals gave theirs to us. And one day, when our time fades, we will pass it on as well, not through monuments or machines, but through the essence of life itself. Maybe that is why we build, why we write, why we create. Somewhere deep within, we know our time is brief, but we long to leave a trace, something that whispers, we were here. And in that longing, we mirror the same desire that once moved through ancient worlds. We are not separate from the Earth's memory, we are one of its voices. It's easy to see only the fragility, how empires crumble, how knowledge fades, how everything returns to dust. But dust, too, is sacred. Every particle carries the story of something that once lived, breathed, and dreamed. When the wind lifts it, it carries the memories of the world across the sky. Every sunset, every wave, every gust of air, all of it is made of what came before. You are walking through the breath of deep time every day. To live within that awareness is to feel the enormity of belonging. You are not just alive now, you are the sum of every life that has ever been. You are the continuation of worlds that rose and fell before memory began. Your thoughts are the echoes of ancient awareness. Your instincts are the whispers of creatures older than imagination. You carry their courage, their fear, their curiosity. The ancient reptile that once hunted in the shadows still beats in your pulse when you are afraid. The mammal that once nursed its young beneath the ferns still moves in your tenderness. The human that once lit the first fire still burns in your imagination. The moral of deep time is not about power or permanence. It is about connection. It is about the way every living thing, across millions of years, has been part of one vast and ongoing conversation. A dialogue written not in words, but in existence itself. The way rivers remember mountains, and forests remember the ashes that once nourished them. The way the earth remembers everything that has ever walked upon it. So, when we look to the stars and dream of eternity, perhaps we already have it, here, in the soil beneath our feet, in the water that cycles endlessly, in the atoms that never die. The universe does not forget. It reshapes. It renews. It continues. The lesson of the earth is not to fear the end, but to recognize the beauty of renewal. The dinosaurs are not gone. They fly above us as birds, their ancient song reshaped into new music. The forests that once turned to stone now fuel our fires and build our homes. The oceans that swallowed the ancient continents now cradle new life. Everything returns in a different form. Everything that was still is, just change. And perhaps one day, far in the future, when our time has passed into legend, another form of life will awaken. It will walk upon this same earth, breathe this same air, and feel that same strange ache, the yearning to understand where it came from. And in that yearning, it will touch the memory of all that came before. It will touch us, for deep time is not a distance to be measured, it is a circle we are always inside. There is no true beginning, no true end, only transformation. And within that realization lies peace. Because when you see the world this way, death becomes just another word for change, and endings become beginnings seen from another side. Nothing is ever truly gone. It only changes shape, and through that shape, through that continuity, the universe learns more about itself. Through us, through dinosaurs, through every creature that ever lived, existence becomes self-aware, for a moment, before it dissolves again into the quiet hum of eternity. That is the moral of deep time. Not despair, but belonging. Not loss, but renewal. Not isolation, but connection beyond measure. You are part of something vast and ancient, a living memory that stretches from the first cell to the last star. You are not the first dreamer of this world, and you will not be the last. But for this brief, miraculous moment, you are the one carrying the light forward. And when your time comes to fade, when all our time does, that light will not die. It will move through the earth again, reshaped, reborn, and waiting for its next form to awaken. That is how the universe remembers. That is how life endures. That is how the whispers of time never cease. Every age believes itself to be the beginning. Every civilization looks at its own reflection and mistakes it for the dawn. They build monuments, chart constellations, carve their stories into the bones of the world, convinced they are the first to dream, the first to speak, the first to matter. But the earth has seen more beginnings than we can count, and every beginning carries within it the faint echo of an ending. The truth is humbler and far more beautiful. Life is not a ladder, climbing ever upward toward perfection. It is a circle, vast and continuous, an unbroken flow of birth, growth, decay, and renewal. Each age rises, shines, fades, and returns, not as repetition, but as evolution. Like the waves of the sea, civilizations crash and retreat, only to gather strength again and roll forward in a new form. Intelligence, too, is part of that cycle. It is not a crown set upon one species' head. It is a current, ancient and restless, that moves through time, flowing from one vessel to another, searching always for new ways to know itself. Sometimes it speaks through claws and scales, sometimes through hands and words. And sometimes it waits, silent, patient, hidden in the dark, until the earth is ready to let it bloom again. Perhaps the dinosaurs were one such bloom. Perhaps, millions of years ago, a spark of self-awareness stirred behind their eyes. Not in the way we measure intelligence, with tools and language and cities, but in a deeper way, an awareness of pattern, of rhythm, of the living pulse that bound them to the earth. They might have known the stars in ways beyond our comprehension, not through maps or numbers, but through instinct and memory. They may have felt the planet breathe beneath their feet and understood that they were part of its vast and endless heartbeat. And when their time ended, when ash and shadow fell across their world, perhaps that current of awareness did not die. Perhaps it drifted forward, waiting, reshaping itself through the long, dark epochs that followed. Until one day, it awoke again, in us. We, who walk upright and call ourselves the pinnacle of evolution, may be nothing more than another vessel for the same intelligence that once flickered in their ancient blood. The human brain, scientists say, still carries the reptilian complex, the oldest layer of consciousness, governing survival, instinct, dominance, and desire. Beneath all our reason and invention, something older still beats, a whisper from a time before thought, before language, before humanity itself. It is not separate from us. It is us. Perhaps we are not their replacements, but their continuation. Perhaps the story of life is not one of extinction, but of inheritance, the passing of a flame from one world to another. Every creature that ever lived has added something to that fire: strength, awareness, compassion, imagination. The spark grows brighter, the vessel changes, the current flows on. To understand this is not to despair. It is to belong. For to see yourself not as the ruler of time, but as its participant, is to feel the quiet comfort of connection. The knowledge that you are part of something vast, ancient, and enduring. You are not separate from the earth's memory. You are that memory, walking and breathing and dreaming. Because the story of Earth is not a tragedy. It is not a tale of loss. It is the story of continuity, of forms transforming, of endings that give birth to beginnings. Nothing that has ever lived is truly gone. It only changes shape. Every atom in your body was forged in the heart of a dying star. Every drop of water in your blood once drifted through the veins of ancient rivers, through the lungs of creatures long extinct. When you breathe, you are sharing air once breathed by dinosaurs, by early mammals, by your own ancestors. Existence is not a line moving forward, it is a circle returning to itself. The moral of deep time is not that all things die, but that all things continue. That every fall is a transformation, and every silence hides a song waiting to begin again. Civilizations bloom and fade not because life fails, but because life is always learning new ways to express itself. And in each form, in each rise and fall, the universe becomes a little more aware of its own reflection. Perhaps this is the true destiny of intelligence, not to conquer, but to remember. Not to dominate, but to understand. To see itself mirrored across the ages, not in difference, but in continuity. The dinosaurs, the mammals, the humans, all are chapters of the same story written in the language of time. And one day, far in the future, when our age too fades into myth, another form of life will awaken. They will walk upon this same earth, under these same stars, and wonder about the creatures who came before them. They will find our bones in our machines, our stories in our ruins, and ask, who were they? And perhaps, in that question, they will feel the same whisper that we feel now, the echo of something ancient moving through them, reminding them that they are not the first dreamers. For life is not a straight line toward progress. It is a great spiral, turning, folding, repeating, each revolution carrying forward the memory of the last. The universe has been many things before us, and it will be many things after. But through it all, one truth endures. The current never stops flowing. And so, the story continues, not in books or monuments, but in the quiet rhythm of the earth herself. Every sunrise, every tide, every heartbeat carries the memory of what came before. We are part of that endless rhythm, a single note in a song that began long before us and will echo long after we are gone. Perhaps the true purpose of life is not to conquer time, but to understand it, to live gently within its circle, and to leave behind not ruins, but whispers of grace for those who will follow.